One of the most persistent questions raised by Blade Runner is the protagonist, Rick Deckard himself, a replicant? Of course, on the surface, the answer would appear to be absolutely not. He himself was a bounty hunter hired to kill replicants. He administers the Voight-Kampff test, which allows him to distinguish between what is human and what is not human. So again, you would think if anyone in the film were human, it would be Rick Deckard. However, there are moments in the film that suggest otherwise. Note that the first time we see Rick Deckard, he's sitting across from a food stand. He's sitting in front of what appears to be some sort of electronics store. But you can note that on either side of him, there are television screens. Now, clearly he is outside the window and not in a television screen. Still, the fact that Ridley Scott decided to render him first beside television screens suggests that he himself might be as flat and artificial as a television screen. It's a subtle hint, but nonetheless a hint that Scott develops in more detail as the film goes on. Here we see Rick Deckard and Gaff at the office of the police chief Bryant. Of course, Bryant would like for Deckard to come out of retirement so he can once again be a bounty hunter and kill the replicants on the loose. When Deckard is quite clear that he does not want to return to the force, Bryant says, "If you are not cop, you are nothing," suggesting that for some reason Deckard is required to be a bounty hunter. As Deckard himself says, no choice, pal, says Bryant. So does this mean that Deckard is somehow obligated to follow out the rules of Bryant? Is he a tool? Is he a replicant? Are bounty hunters themselves replicants? The fact that Deckard seems to have zero choice in the matter suggests that he is no more than a machine to the police department, a machine that can be used at will when needed. Now, connected to this idea is, as we will see later in this lecture, Gaff's seeming knowledge of Deckard's own consciousness. Here we see Deckard in the aftermath of his administering to Rachel the Voight-Kampff test. After giving her many questions, many more than most replicants require, he does indeed conclude that she is a replicant. Rachel herself does not know this, though it seems that Tyrell later on does tell her that she's a replicant. She comes to visit Deckard at his apartment, his monotone, grim, dark apartment, and she says, "Look, I know I'm a human. I have photographs of myself as a child. I have memories." And Deckard, with extreme callousness, rather mockingly says, "Look, they're implants. They're the implants based on the memories of Tyrell's niece." This is cruel. If Deckard had the empathy of a human being, would he be so cruel to Rachel? In fact, earlier he refers to Rachel as an it. So, if to be a human in this film is to show the ability to love, the ability to be sensitive to suffering of oneself and others, then Deckard falls far short of that at this point in the film. In fact, the only character who does appear to us to have human characteristics, if indeed the human characteristics are empathy, the ability to be sensitive to suffering of oneself and others, then it is Roy Batty. The film suggests, therefore, that to be human has nothing to do with what you're made of, but has everything to do with a set of behaviors. Later in the film, when Deckard seems to be falling in love with Rachel and has treated her with more empathy than earlier, he seduces her, and his seduction is violent. It's not far from a sexual assault. He tries to kiss her at the piano. Rachel gets up, tries to run away. He slams the door, will not let her out. He throws her against the window and gives her orders of things to do. There again, he does not appear to have the characteristics we associate with humans. Furthermore, the fact that he is trying so hard to exert control of over Rachel suggests that he feels insecure about his own humanity. Look how the shot is made. We see the light on Deckard. Rachel remains in the dark. It's a medium shot. This suggests that Deckard himself wants to be light, have the light of reason, the light of rationality, and therefore wants to think of himself as superior to Rachel, who is in the dark. That's one point. But two, notice the ironic shadow of the blinds, suggesting that even though Deckard likes to think of himself as beyond mechanical behavior, likes to think of himself as having freedom, free will, free choice, which of course is another attribute we associate with the human, he is in fact shackled, he is imprisoned. This clue is the greatest one in suggesting that Deckard is a replicant. While Deckard dozes at the piano, he falls into a dream, and his dream is of a unicorn. This is important because at the end of the film, Gaff makes an origami figure of a unicorn, just as Deckard and Rachel are attempting to escape. Rachel, of course, is a remaining replicant who needs to be killed, although now Deckard is in love with her and wants to help her escape. As he's walking out of his apartment to escape, he steps on, or just comes across this origami unicorn that Gaff has made. This, of course, suggests that Gaff knows what is in the mind of Deckard, suggests that Deckard's own memories are implants, and that he is on the same level as Rachel. He, too, is a replicant. Now, it's important to note that in the theatrical release of the film, the unicorn sequence and the origami unicorn did not occur. When Ridley Scott released the director's cut many years later, he put those scenes in. So, we wonder, is Deckard a replicant? Is he not? We ultimately cannot know. The film is not conclusive one way or the other. So we need to think, what is the role of ambiguity in the film? What is the role of irreducible ambiguity? There's evidence to suggest that Deckard is a replicant. There's evidence to suggest that he is not a replicant. Which is it, and why does Ridley Scott choose to leave this ambiguity in the middle of the film? Well, it could well be that the ability to tolerate ambiguity, the ability to think slowly and subtly about ambiguity, might be one of the greatest human traits of all. And is Ridley Scott trying to evoke that in the audience of the film, trying to evoke in the audience nuanced thoughts that no one in the film itself seems capable of?